small displacement motorcycle market in the United States has never been as competitive as it is right now. Riders are no longer satisfied with entry-level bikes that only serve as a stepping stone. They want style, technology, and a machine that feels modern while still being affordable. That's why Honda's move with the new 2026 Honda CL250 is catching so much attention. For the first time, this retro-inspired scrambler gets Honda's e-clutch system, a semi-automatic electronic clutch technology that changes the way shifting feels on a lightweight motorcycle. And the real question is, does this innovation make sense on a 250cc bike sold in the US market, where competition is already heating up with options like the Kawasaki Z400, Yamaha R3, and even Honda's own Rebel 300? Let's break it down. The CL250 has always been positioned as a classic-looking, urban-friendly motorcycle that pays homage to Honda's scramblers of the 1960s. The 2026 model keeps that same retro silhouette. Round headlight, high bars, flat seat. But the big update is hidden in the transmission. The e-clutch system allows you to ride without touching the clutch lever at all. You can upshift and downshift simply using the foot lever, while the electronics handle the clutch engagement and disengagement with surgical precision. For beginners, this means a smoother learning curve. For experienced riders, it opens up the possibility of faster, more precise shifts in city traffic. And importantly, you still have the option to use the clutch manually if you prefer. Mechanically, the bike remains powered by the same 249cc single-cylinder engine, producing around 24 horsepower and 17 lb-ft of torque, with a weight just under 340 pounds wet. In the American market, that puts it right against the Kawasaki Z125 Pro on the low end and the bigger Rebel 300 or Yamaha MT-03 on the higher end. Price will be the decisive factor. While official US pricing hasn't been confirmed, if Honda brings it close to $5,200 to $5,500, it could undercut some rivals while offering a more premium feature with the e-clutch. The strong points here are obvious. Riders in big cities like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago, who deal with constant stop-and-go traffic, will love not having to pull the clutch lever every few seconds. It also reduces fatigue for new riders still building confidence. On the downside, purists will argue that part of the charm of a small retro bike is mastering manual clutch control. And adding technology always raises the question of long-term reliability and cost of maintenance. Will riders trust an electronic clutch system on a bike that's supposed to be simple and approachable? This is exactly where the debate gets interesting, and we're only getting started. Because when you compare this Honda with its direct rivals in the US market, you begin to see both its advantages and its limitations. In the next section, we'll dive deep into those comparisons, Kawasaki, Yamaha, and even Honda's own Rebel lineup, to find out whether the CL250's e-clutch is a game changer or just a marketing gimmick. Now let's put the Honda CL250 right up against its direct competition in the US market. Because a motorcycle, no matter how innovative, is only as good as the context in which it competes. And here in America, riders looking at the CL250 will almost certainly be cross-shopping with models like the Kawasaki Z400, the Yamaha MT-03, and Honda's own Rebel 300. Each of these bikes represents a different angle on the lightweight category, and that's why understanding where the CL250 fits is critical. Start with Kawasaki. The Z400 is a naked sport bike that has become one of the benchmarks in this segment. With its 3999cc parallel twin, it produces about 47 horsepower and 28 lb-ft of torque, nearly double what the CL250 delivers. At 364 pounds wet, it's only slightly heavier, and the starting price sits around $5,399. So, for just a few $100s more, you're getting a machine that's significantly faster and highway capable. This is the biggest strike against the CL250 for American buyers. The performance per dollar ratio looks weak compared to the Kawasaki. But then again, the Z400 is more aggressive, more sport-oriented, and lacks the relaxed scrambler charm of the Honda. Then you have Yamaha's MT-03, another strong player. Powered by a 321cc twin making 41 horsepower and 22 lb-ft of torque. The MT-03 weighs about 373 pounds wet and sells for $4,999. It sits right in the sweet spot of affordability and usable performance. It's more powerful than the CL250 but not overwhelming. Riders often describe it as approachable yet exciting, which is a balance that the Honda will have to work hard to match. Where the CL250 has an edge, however, is style and technology. The Yamaha is modern and sporty, but it doesn't carry the same retro DNA or advanced clutch technology. For riders who want something that stands out in design and offers convenience in traffic, the Honda can carve its own niche. Finally, there's Honda's own Rebel 300. This is an important comparison because Honda risks competing with itself here. The Rebel 300 uses a 286cc single-cylinder engine producing 25 horsepower and 20 lb-ft of torque, with a curb weight around 364 pounds. Price starts at $4,149. On paper, the Rebel actually makes more torque than the CL250, and it's already proven in the American market as a beginner-friendly cruiser. So why would someone pick the CL250 over the Rebel 300? The answer lies in personality. The CL250 is styled like a scrambler, upright ergonomics, flat seat, and a bit more versatility on rough pavement. It appeals to riders who want classic looks with a playful edge, whereas the Rebel is more locked into the cruiser identity. The e-clutch system also gives the CL250 a unique advantage that the Rebel doesn't offer, making it feel more modern. Now, these comparisons highlight both the strengths and weaknesses of Honda's strategy. On the one hand, the CL250 is underpowered compared to its Japanese rivals, and that will always matter to American riders who value highway capability and acceleration. On the other hand, it's lighter, stylish, and offers technology that no competitor currently has in this price range. In fact, the e-clutch could become a deciding factor for buyers who are intimidated by manual clutches but don't want to settle for a scooter or automatic transmission bike. But this brings us to the real conflict. Will American riders, who often emphasize raw performance and displacement, be willing to pay nearly the same price for a 250 when a 400cc option is right next to it on the showroom floor? Or does the added technology and style make the difference? In the final section, we'll answer that question by looking at the bigger picture. The role of small bikes in the US market, the future of Honda's technology, and whether the CL250 is worth recommending for 2026. So, where does all of this leave the 2026 Honda CL250 in the eyes of the American rider? After looking at the numbers, the competition, and the unique e-clutch system, the answer depends less on specs and more on what kind of rider you are. Because in the US, the small displacement category has always been a tricky one. Many riders here see anything under 400cc as too small for real highway use. That's why Kawasaki, Yamaha, and even KTM dominate the conversation with their 300cc and 400cc machines. They hit that balance between affordability and practicality. The CL250, by contrast, doubles down on style, accessibility, and technology, even if it sacrifices outright performance. Let's be clear. At 24 horsepower and 17 lb-ft of torque, the CL250 is not built for long freeway stretches at 75 miles per hour. It can do it, but it won't feel as stable or relaxed as a Z400 or MT-03. Instead, it thrives in urban environments, suburban commuting, and short leisure rides. The lightweight, under 340 pounds, makes it easy to maneuver and unintimidating for new riders. And the e-clutch system removes one of the biggest barriers for beginners, mastering clutch control in stop-and-go traffic. That's a major selling point. In fact, if Honda can successfully market this feature as a confidence booster for new riders, the CL250 could become the first step for a whole new generation of motorcyclists in the US. But this is also where the debate lands. Purists and experienced riders may dismiss the e-clutch as unnecessary on a 250, saying it complicates a machine that should stay simple. And they have a point. Part of the joy of riding small bikes has always been the mechanical connection, the feeling that every input matters. The Honda challenges that tradition by offering a smoother, more automated experience. So the real question is not whether the CL250 beats its rivals on paper, it doesn't, but whether it changes the conversation about what a small retro motorcycle can be. From a financial perspective, If Honda positions the price correctly, around $5,200 to $5,500, the CL250 will appeal to riders who value design, heritage, and ease of use over raw numbers. If it climbs much higher, though, it risks falling into the shadow of the Z400 and MT-03, which will always offer more performance for the money. The reflection here is simple. The 2026 Honda CL250 is not trying to be the fastest or the most powerful in its class. It's trying to be the most approachable. It's trying to merge classic looks with modern tech and give new riders a smoother on-ramp into motorcycling. And that's something the American market actually needs, because for every rider chasing horsepower, there are 10 more people curious about bikes but intimidated by the learning curve. If Honda manages to capture those riders, the CL250 could become one of the most important small bikes of this decade. So, is it worth recommending? If you're looking for a small motorcycle with personality, if you value convenience and style more than top-end power, and if you want to experience Honda's latest technology in an affordable package, then yes, the CL250 deserves a spot on your radar. But if your focus is highway power, aggressive acceleration, or maximum performance per dollar, you'll likely find better options in the Z400 or MT-03. In other words, the CL250 is a motorcycle with a very specific mission, and sometimes that's exactly what makes a bike stand out.